So Parsha Shavua this week is the week of. Let me actually. I'm still recording. This is the week of Yitzchak. Yitzchak is fascinating. Yitzchak is, Avraham splashes onto the scene as this bold and unique character, and um, he leaves the Mesopotamian center and he rescues captives and he does commando raids and he argues with God and he tries to save the people of Sodom, right? This is Abraham is a unique, towering, profound figure, and Yitzchak we have he barely speaks. If he says 150 words in all of Tanakh, I think that's a lot. I think I'm overestimating the amount of words that belong to Yitzchak if I put it at 150. So he's a very unique character, but I think there's actually a lot to learn from him, and I think that he stands in significant contrast to to Abraham. Now, here, there just interestingly, this is an aside. There are 11 times in the book of Bereshit, it will say Eila Toldot. These are the generations of. So Eila Toldot Yitzchak ben Abraham. These are the generations of Yitzchak and Abraham. You can see here that the Sefaria translation is that they use the word, this is the story of Yitzchak ben Abraham. Now, fascinatingly, this sentence is this. So let's just work with their translation. This is the story of Isaac ben Abraham. And so it starts, Abraham holidet Yitzchak. That's redundant. Yitzchak ben Abraham, Yitzchak son of Abraham, it means that Abraham sired Yitzchak. He begot Yitzchak. So why does it start that way? So the I think it's the Netziv, although I think it's a fairly obvious point. So I think it may be many other commentaries beyond the Netziv, who is Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berliner, who is a late 19th century commentator. He says the reason that that is written there is because Abraham stood so large in Yitzchak's life that's really, in a way, that's a summary of the whole story. It's not just the beginning of the story. It is, in certain ways, the story. But I will say, I'm going to perhaps minimize that in our discussion today. I will say it is at the very least the beginning of the story. There's a lot about Yitzchak which is very different. So the beginning of our parsha will be the famous story about the two twins. They're going to have twins, and they wrestle in her womb, and she doesn't know what's going on, and she goes to seek out the prophet's advice. Who the prophet is, it was kind of left at sort of our imagination. It says, "Vatelech lidrosh et Hashem." She went to inquire of Hashem. Was that Abraham? Was that Shem and Aver? The rabbis have all these ideas, but the basic idea is, and some people will say it was her own pure nevuah. Sorry.
Mom,
Oh,
Next time you can stop.
you stop.
um, so um, the but this famously tells us, there are two nations in your womb, um, and Hashem answered, two nations are in your womb, two separate people shall issue from your body. One people shall be the mightier, the other shall be serve the younger. So here I want to just lay down what I think was the most profound piece of interpretation that I've heard in I can't tell you how many years. To me, this is absolutely fundamental kinds of an insight. So let me ask you a question. Right? When she says there are two nations in your belly, what is this referring to? Who's this verse about?
Esav and Yaakov.
Esav and Yaakov. And forgive me for asking this question, Nora. Were those real people? Did they walk this earth?
As far as we know, we don't. We're not sure.
Let's say yes. Let's say yes. Let's just take that as a stipulation. There were two people that were born at that time. One was named Esav, the other one was named Yaakov. They both walked this earth. They were both flesh and blood. They were born, they lived, they died. Does that do you think that the most accurate interpretation of that verse is that this verse is referring to those two specific individuals?
It's probably more of um like there's a word for that, something that stands for a larger
Allegory.
allegory. Yeah.
Okay, it's an allegory. So an allegory, I will agree with you about allegory when we're talking about the Garden of Eden. And if I want to talk about the Garden of Eden and I want to talk about a fruit that was desirous, I know this is not very PG, but we could say that that is the sexual desire, right? I could say that the tree of good and evil is really all about sexual desire, right? Because before they ate from the tree, they didn't know they were naked, and after they ate from the tree, they lost their innocence and they knew that they were naked and they were ashamed of it, right? So that all kind of works out nice. That's an allegory, right? Because it's referring to something totally different. It's not about a tree, and it's not about a fruit, it's about a whole kind of world of desire. But here I think it's a little different. So I heard this from Professor Uriel Simon, who's a professor of Bible at, he's a devout man, he's a professor of Bible at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. And he said that sometimes you have to read the story of Yaakov and Esav, not about two individual people, but about two nations. There are going to be two nations who are going to be locked in an epic struggle. And the place where I think that this is an absolutely interesting and brilliant read is when we get to the story about Yaakov and Esav, and Yaakov having steal the blessing from Esav. Yaakov has to lie to his father, or he has to betray his own ethics in order to survive, right? Fair enough? That story, if you ask me, is the story of the Napoleonic Sanhedrin, right? Jews are given the right to citizenship in France. And so they're asked like they don't just ask like weird Jews. The biggest Talmud Chacham in France was Rabbi David Zinsheim. He's the head of that Sanhedrin. He didn't have a choice. It's either be on that Sanhedrin or die. And so they say, can a Jewish a marriage between a Jewish man and a Catholic French woman, is that a true marriage according to you? Because the question is, when the state creates a marriage, of course, two citizens whose marriage is blessed by the state, you have to say, well, we're both citizens. Why shouldn't it work? But of course, it doesn't work on Jewish terms. So he had to lie. They forced him to lie. They forced him to say that Judaism is not a nationality, right? Raise your hand. You can raise it electronically. Raise your hand if you think Judaism is not a nationality. We're just a religion. We come to pray like Arafat. Arafat likes to think that we all have passports from other places, so we're not a nation. Raise your hand if you think that's true. None of us think that's true. Right. But the Napoleonic Sanhedrin, headed by this very important rabbi, Rabbi David Zinsheim, was told, say that Judaism is not a, a nation. So this is exactly the story of Yaakov and Esav, right? It works, to me, it works better in the as when you read it about this national struggle, that this will ultimately be the struggle between our peoples, that in order to be able to survive and inherit the blessing, we will occasionally have to dress up, put on hairy fur, and say, I am Esav, right? Anochi Esav bechorecha. I am. Don't worry, Napoleon. We're good Frenchmen. That's the Jew putting this on. So I just want to point this out just as an archetypal reading that because I think we're going to need this point as we get a little bit further into the story of Yitzchak. Okay, I'm going to skip us down a little bit further. I don't want to get into the whole story of Yaakov and Esav because I'm a little bit um, um, uh, um, fascinated by a particular story here. Now, you want to be on, if you're following this in your own Chumash, you want to be on chapter 26. Okay, now remember we started off by saying that this particular story begins with Eila Toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham. These are the generations of Isaac, son of Avraham. First thing to note is Abraham begat Yitzchak. And we said that the Netziv said that this shows you that this such an important event that it's going to color everything that goes on. Well, guess what? When Abraham got to the land of Israel, guess what happened first? There was a famine. And what happened in the famine? Well, in the famine, Abraham went down to Egypt. So it says, Vayira av ba'aretz, there was a famine in the land. Milvad harav rishon, in addition to the initial famine that there was. Asher hayabi me Abraham, in the days of Abraham. And then Yitzchak goes to Avimelech, Melech Plishtim, Grara. So Yitzchak is going to leave, presumably wherever he's living, and he's going to this area called Gerar. Now, I did the homework of finding where Gerar is on the map. Let me just show you here. Just so I want you to be able to understand Gerar. Okay, this is Gerar on the map of Israel. Okay, so you see where Gaza is. You can see Ashkelon. You don't see it over there. People who are here are unfortunately not able to see it. I'll turn it around to you. You can see where Beersheba is. This little window over here is Gerar. Okay, that's
Where's Gaza?
Gaza's over here.
Okay.
Beersheba is over here, and Ashkelon. So right there in the middle. If you drive from Beersheba to a city called Netivot, you're gonna hit Gerar along the way. In fact, there's even a sign there that tells you you're passing Gerar. Now,
No town today.
it's really a park there because that's there, and I want to just kind of show you what this area looks like. So the sort of like the lightning bolt that's sort of in the center there is sort of like a wadi that probably fills up in the rainy season, and you can see that there are just lots of fields around here in this whole area. You can see there's just a lot of probably this is from Google Earth. When Google Earth took this picture, it was probably you plant winter wheat here, and you would harvest it in early spring before Pesach probably is when you would harvest there. Okay, so today it is an agricultural zone, and the things online will tell you that this is part of Israel making the desert bloom. But let's just understand for a moment. This is where Yitzchak moves to. This is his new place of dwelling. Okay, get back to our um, our okay, let me just reshare. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right. So he goes to Gerar. Now, just another little bit of background. Avimelech was the one where Abraham makes a little pact with him, and it's called Beersheba, right? They make a pact over the 7 wells because there's some argument over the wells, and they said, for me and my children, my grandchildren, my great grandchildren, we're going to have a pact. Okay. That was between Abraham and Avimelech. Vayar elav Hashem vayomer al tered Mitzrayim. God speaks to Yitzchak, very terse language. Yitzchak is associated with short and simple. So he says, do not go to Egypt, Shechon ba'aretz asher lecha. Dwell in the land in which I tell you. Now, you have to pattern this in contrast to Abraham, right? Abraham is lech lecha el haaretz asher areka. Go forth to the land which I will show you. And Yitzchak is not going anywhere. He is shechon, dwell. He is not moving anywhere. Now, the rabbis like to say that Yitzchak was an olat mima. He was a pure, perfect offering. And so his holiness could not have left the land of Israel. So this is that would be a spiritual interpretation of that idea. Um, um, that would be a spiritual interpretation of that idea, but you could also understand this in the political dimension of what's going on, because here we're and I'm going to try and um, perhaps describe this in more of a political terms than a spiritual terms, but you could understand in either way. So he tells you, Gur ba'aretz hazot ve'ehyeh imach ve'abarachecha. Live in this land, and I will be with you, and I will bless you. Ki l'chol zarecha eten et kol ha'aretzot ha'el. For to you and your descendants I will give all of these lands. V'akimoti et hashua asher nishbati l'Avraham avicha. I will keep the promise that I made to Avram. This is the promise of the land. And then the continuation is, now I'm going to make your children multiply, etc. And he says, because Abraham did this for me. Now, gotta love it. Sentence 6, 3 words. Vayeshev Yitzchak Bigrar. Isaac dwelled in Gerar. Isaac is going to be unique amongst the Avot, but we're gonna have to wait maybe 4 or 5 more verses to understand why this is so. The next couple of verses are Yitzchak trying to do the trick of Abraham, the trick of saying, "Oh, tell him you're my sister," but the people look in his window and they see that he's how should I put it, romantic with his wife, and so the ruse doesn't work. Now, this is very interesting for 2 reasons. Number one is he's trying to relive the Avraham story, but it's not working. He does not successfully get to the same place that Abraham gets in this. And I would say, of all the ways in which Abraham behaved, this is perhaps the one that you would least want to emulate. But let's understand also that here Yitzchak should not have to pretend. Yitzchak is told he should live in this land. There should be no need for this in this scenario. So let's go to sentence 9. Vayikra Avimelech Yitzchak vayomer ach hine ishtecha hi. That's your wife. Ve'ech amarta ochoti hi. Why did you say it's your sister? And Yitzchak declares his fear. Ki amarti pen amut aleha. I was afraid I would die for her. And so Abimelech tries to turn this around on him. And Abimelech tells everybody, don't touch this individual. Sentence 12 is our very important sentence. Vayizra Yitzchak ba'aretz hahi. Yitzchak planted in this land. Vayimtza b'shana hahi mea she'arim. And in that year, he reaped 100-fold. Vayivarchehu Hashem. This is an important statement because this tells us that Yitzchak, of all of the Avot, of Abraham, of Yaakov, of the 12 tribes, Yitzchak is the only one who is a farmer. He is the only one who literally puts down roots in Israel. And there was a reason I showed you that whole picture of Gerar and the area, because that was where Yitzchak was planting. And you could see all of those fields, and you could see, I'm assuming the picture is, again, a winter wheat crop, which is harvested in the spring. I have no way to know, but at least that's what my understanding of that area is. You know who the expert is on that? It's Rabbi Gottlieb, was really the person who knew Israel agriculture the best. But this is one of the things that a modern Israeli scholar, actually 2 of them. I saw this both from Netanel Ellenson. Netanel Ellenson is a Tanakh teacher who's very geographically oriented. He does a lot of geographical interpretations in Tanakh, and he's got like now YouTube videos that will show you, will take you on these tours. But also, if you go to Israel, you can hire him as a guide, and he literally takes you to different places. I discovered him through Itai Kaliski. Itai Kaliski was very demonstrated a couple of interesting things based on Nathanael Ellison. And Nathanael Ellison is saying, look, we can see where Yitzchak lived. We know exactly this area. It's called Grar, and there was wheat that was there, and we can see that Yitzchak was the first of the. He was the Avot who was a farmer. Now, what is very fascinating here is that Yitzchak is a farmer, and what if you've been sticking with me for Tanakh teaching, you know that I've been fascinated by this theme that runs through the Tanakh, and I will start it, and hopefully somebody here can finish it. The story throughout from the first chapters of Bereshit um, through certainly through the book of Shemot is farmers kill nobody. Somebody help me.
Sheep, sheep,
What? Shepherds. Okay, sheep.
shepherds,
Farmers kill
shepherds,
shepherds, right?
shepherds.
That's the story of Cain and Abel. That's the story of Egypt. That's the story of Mesopotamia. That's the story that the shepherds are the people who move around. The farmers are the people who build these sort of organized hydraulic societies and are very oppressive. Tower of Babel, the Nile hydraulic society. It's a theme that runs through Tanakh. So here you have a very interesting figure. You have Yitzchak, who is a farmer, but he's a vulnerable farmer, right? And we're going to see how vulnerable he is as a farmer, which explains a lot. Why is it that Yitzchak loves Esav? What does Esav have that Yaakov doesn't?
Well, he prepares.
The hunter.
He's a hunter. Esav's a tough guy. He's an enforcer. He's Taidomi. That shows you how old my hockey knowledge is, right? Yitzchak he's a vulnerable shepherd, but Esav, this exact same words that are used about Nimrod, right? The strong man of Mesopotamia, Kitzaid Befiv, that he was a hunter. Now that hunter thing is a very interesting term because it works two ways. It means like you could actually hunt and you were strong and sort of in the martial arts, but it also means that you were able to seduce people, that you have this ability to be sort of a leader amongst men and marshal a large force. And what do we know about Esav? When we meet him as Yaakov is returning from Lavan, how many men does Esav have? Very good, Esther. Esav has 400 men. Esav is good at putting together a small army. Well, I imagine 400 men as an army in Little Gerar was a pretty formidable force. And you're like, okay, you can understand why Yitzchak, who is told, don't leave the land, he is fulfilling the biblical promise that made to Avram. He is being the farmer, right? And so he's doing this. He's putting these roots down. Um, Now, just I believe I got 6 minutes left on my Parsha HaShavua clock. So here, let's do it a little bit quickly. First of all, they dig wells. Now the wells, the problem with the wells is they're not fighting over the wells; they're fighting over the aquifers, right? So the way that wells work is there's a underground water table, and if one guy draws from his well, you don't have water in your well, right? So they're fighting over the wells. Now you gotta love it. Um, 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 so they have a fight over the wells, right? Um, and the first well they call Sitna, right? They call it enmity, the well of conflict, right? Um, and so and here I was said that here they called the name of the well they called Ashek, right? Because it means trickery, right? So the wells are sort of named after the conflicts. Just to make a long story short, when Avram takes an oath with Avimelech, who's the same character we're meeting now, Avram makes an oath over the wells. At this point, Avram hasn't bought a an inch of land. So he makes a promise with Avimelech, takes a shvua, takes an oath over the wells. When Yitzchak and Avimelech make a pact, it is a personal guarantee. But Yitzchak's not giving away any land. not giving away title to any of the wells, because Yitzchak has to be, he is the hold of the land. Now, here, I'm about to give you Rosenblatt's full synthesis of the rest of Bereshit. Okay, now wait a minute. All right. So, okay. So let's just say we are understanding the movement from Abraham to Yitzchak. So Abraham's the great revolutionary. He needs to be someone who's mobile, right? It's only at the end of his life that he buys the burial place for Sarah. He puts that stake in the ground. He says, okay, we have ground. I've literally raised my son Yitzchak up on the mountain and made him attached to the ground. He is an Olah Tamimah, he's a pure Olah. And then he becomes a farmer and he puts roots down in the ground and he's not going to leave the land of Israel, and he's going to defend this turf, and he needs his strong man to defend the turf, and he's not going anywhere. And then God, in his infinite wisdom, gives him a son who's got to run away, who goes back in time, who goes back to being a shepherd, right? That's Yaakov. Yaakov goes to being a shepherd, and Yaakov goes away to be a shepherd, he comes back, and not only does Yaakov have to become a shepherd, but even if Yaakov comes back, he returns to the land of Israel, right? Yaakov is the least stable of the Avot because Avraham may have been born in Haran and moved to Israel, but Avraham buries his wife in Israel. Avraham buries himself is buried in Israel. Avraham dies in Israel. Where does Yaakov die? In Egypt. Poor guy. Like, imagine that, right? Your family's legacy was to move to the land of Israel. Your father would not take a step out of the land of Israel. He finally put down crops in Israel. He said, this is where our family is. This is our heritage. This is our everything. Your mother is buried in Israel. Your grandmother is buried in Israel. Your grandfather is buried in Israel. And, and you have to bring your whole family down to Egypt? Gewalt. Right? Seems like a bad story.
Yeah.
So I would say, what's missing? What was incomplete with Yitzchak? So this is Rosenblatt's interpretation. I haven't seen this anywhere else, but I'm fascinated with it. So either love it or tell me it's completely wrong and then prove it to me. It's like this. For the Jewish people to hold on to the land of Israel, you cannot do it by yourself. It's not about one person doing a quiet contemplation of God in the midst of his wheat field. That's not Israel. Israel is held, this is a little bit of Noah Harari coming into this. Noah Harari's got a book called Nexus, a very interesting book, where his basic point is that human beings are only strong as a network. No human is going to be stronger than a lion. No human is going to be stronger than a gorilla, right? We're one-on-one, we're not necessarily good with anything. We're pretty weak and puny. And we're not that fast either. But as a group, that's where humans excel. So in order for the Jewish people to really excel, they have to develop the group, right? And so Yitzchak, part of the deficiency is Yitzchak cannot produce two sons who get along. Yaakov does not start off producing two sons that get along. The only way that the Jewish people are able to come to the land of Israel is because they, if you will, figuratively, they're carrying the bones of Joseph. That the two different parts of the family they're all traveling together. It's only because the children of Gad and Reuven and half of Manasseh are willing to fight for their brothers. The only way that this all works is the reason we leave Israel is because we sold our brother into slavery. And then we go into slavery and we are forged into a nation. In Devarim, it refers to Egypt as Kor HaBarzel, the iron smelting furnace. It needs to all come together. And so Yitzchak, as much as he has the land and as much as the land is perfect, the land without a unified family cannot be held. And that what you need through the Yaakov story is the completion of the Hashomer Achi Anochi, am I my brother's keeper, right? You need the completion of the brothers who are going to fulfill the promise of taking Joseph's bones back. that you're worried about somebody else's problems. That's the that's the key. And in that's sort of the I think the great lesson. That's sort of the great epic, is that the Jewish people only can come back as Am Yisrael. And at this point, we don't have the Am session. The land is fine. We got that. The purity we have, good. But you're missing the Am. And that's why going back to the reading of Uriel Simon is that this is not about it's not strictly a story about individuals. It is a meta story about a people, which I know some of you are going to say to me, "Oh, Rabbi, we said it was an allegory," and this is what we meant by an allegory. I was only saying that it's a little different than an allegory because the people represent both themselves and their national identity at the same time. And anyway, that's my spiel on this week's parsha. Three. Esther's holding up the three sign for me. Well, I would say people land in a Torah. So that's what most. If you want to throw the language in, that would be four. Yeah, I mean that's sort of the modern Zionist thing. But that modern Zionist thing is the people land and the language. That's because they kind of throw the Torah to the side. But if you were to, you would if you were to talk to an Israeli religious Zionist, they would say, Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, Torah Yisrael. So anyway. Okay, Tov. We're now just going to close. We're going to go to Smichat Chaver. That